We are live. We are live. We are live in our time, but not live for the podcast recording. So, um, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
hmm
It's glad to be part of this journey that you've gotten started, man.
We can get all emotional over it too, and just like start crying at every other's word, like what's going around right now, the Ariana Grande interviews with Wicked.
Yeah, yeah. I hear some violins in the background. I don't know what's going on. Yeah,
That's me. I got a leprechaun I keep under my desk, chained to my desk, and so he's just there for the ambient background.
nice,
I have
man.
to feed him some Lucky Charms every now and then, and but he gives me a pot of gold once a month. It's just chocolate. It's just chocolate gold, but I take what I can get.
Hey, man. If crypto's a thing, chocolate gold will be a thing one day, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We'll all be paying ourselves in milk chocolate. What a
Yeah.
wonderful world that'll be in.
Oh
Well,
man.
for the audience, just go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, my name is Jack Miller. I'm a director of photography in the Midwest. I've been doing it since probably 2019, 2020. A little bit of a gray area with the pandemic, but yeah, that's what I do. I love what I do, and I'm excited to be able to bring people's visions to life and execute, and you know, just be a part of the filmmaking process. So
What got you into it though? Because a lot of people, some people start off like when they're kids, but how old are you? And when? And you said you started in 2019. So how old were you when you got into it for the first time?
yeah, 2019, I was 21, I believe, going on to 22. Yeah. So, and then to answer your question about like how I got started and like what got me into it, I had always done photography when I was a kid. So I feel like I just had this draw to um, compose images and just capture the world around me. Um, Whether that be from like a narrative perspective or just like oh, this looks cool kind of thing. I think that kind of drew me into this instinctively. And then once I kind of saw that, hey, there's this title in the credits in these films and these movies called director of photography, I looked into it a little bit more and I was like, that's really cool. People are actually doing this for a living. So, um, yeah, man. And then also, me and my dad used to watch movies a lot when I was a kid. And, one movie that I enjoed a lot was, well, the series, the Spider-Man series with Tobey Maguire. I really enjoyed those growing up, and we had like a special edition for the second one, I believe, and it was an electronic press kit of like all the behind the scenes, the
Mm-hmm.
actors, the filmmakers involved, and I was just like, this is really cool. And I was about like 6 or 7 when that happened, or I don't know, whenever Spider-Man 2 came out on DVD, mid 2000s ish.
Mm-hmm.
So um, that was kind of in the back of my mind when I was a kid, like not from a sense of, oh, I could do this for a living, just this is really cool. So long answer, but that's kind of the background.
Well, that's cool. So you started off doing photography when you were a kid. You loved movies, as a filmmaker normally does. I haven't met a lot of filmmakers that were like, I mean, they're not really my thing, but they're fun to make.
Yeah.
um, when you picked up your first camera, what was that like to be able to suddenly have that power in your hands and start creating?
It was magical. I mean, to lack of a better term, man. There's just something about, not to sound too pretentious, but to have that kind of capability, to have that kind of power,
Mhm.
to capture something, and you know, obviously there's a lot of thought that, like, when you have that kind of power, there should be a lot of thought that goes
Yeah.
into some, um, whatever you're setting out to make. So I guess long answer. The obviously really great feelings. It's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a specific moment. I think when I was doing the college movie festival um, years ago, uh, I just had a lot of emotions of uh, like happiness and like, yeah, you can edit this
Satisfaction.
together, right?
Mm.
You can edit this together, right?
Oh no, no, you are. I'm not touching this. I'm just.
Oh
If you fail, I'm just gonna watch you fail, and I'm gonna
man,
enjoy it. And I'm gonna laugh at it, and then I'm gonna
yeah.
put some sound effects over it.
Okay, excellent,
I'm gonna
cool.
exploit it as much as possible for views in the most selfish way imaginable.
I'll put it on TikTok
Good TikTok content.
then. Yeah.
But why cinematography though? Like, why not directing or acting or writing? What
Yeah.
specifically about cinematography was the thing that you appreciated the most that set you on the path?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, for me, I think I've just always been into the idea of, I've always been more satisfied with making other people's dreams a reality, um,
Hmm.
in the sense of, say a director comes along and they have this really cool idea, this really cool story. I just naturally, for whatever reason, um, start to picture ideas in my head from like a cinematography standpoint. Like
Mm.
I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but um, long story short, it's like, okay, well, I have an appreciation for other people's stories, and I instinctively enjoy like making their stories come to life.
Cool. Because as a director and someone who writes, I also get that picture in my head, but because I gravitate toward using words
Mm-hmm.
both to write and to speak, I'm confident enough that I'll be able to communicate exactly what I see in my head using my words in order to actually put that picture in someone else's head. But what I found also is that when I'm talking with a DP is uh, the nuances that are happening in their own version of the picture in my head that actually add to the thing that's in my head in a way that I didn't imagine. And so for me, as the one who's communicating to a DP, that is its own form of magic in that way. Especially, I, I psychologically put your head in a different headspace, and then there's nuances that come out of it
Mm-hmm.
that add value and make the version in my head even better. And
Right.
then it's that back and forth through the process of just telepathically bouncing off of one another that
Yeah.
just creates something that was better than the parts
Mhm.
individualized by themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big beauties of filmmaking is that collaboration process. Sure, there's like guerrilla filmmakers and like one man bands, and people who are just making movies by themselves. But honestly, like if you don't have other people to have those kind of interactions to bounce those ideas off of each other, I think it's a shame, honestly. Like, I'm not saying that like the people that go and set out to make those movies by themselves are bad or they're making bad
Right.
pieces of art. But there is, to me at least, something to be said about the collaboration. I think collaboration also really drew me into this
Mhm.
field too.
When you're collaborating with someone, though, what uh, what stands off to you as because say you got a good script, and
Mhm.
then a director's pitching it to you, even though the script might be good and you got a good picture going on in your head, what is a red flag to you when you're talking with someone about their vision that even if I do my best here, I'm not reading them as someone that's in the end going to deliver my good product and package it in a way that is going to be coherent or suitable for or just respectful to the rest of the collaborators of the project. So
Mm.
what are those red flags that you think that you've either experienced or that you look for when you're reading that person across from the table that wants you to be a part of their project?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the easiest answer to give um, is when they have these like huge, like aspirational, like ideas, but then, they have a lack of understanding of maybe the resources that they have available.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't a bad thing. Like, obviously, you want to shoot for the stars, but I think
And everyone has a first time for something too.
yeah, I think there should always be a sense of realism when you're um, setting out to make something. That's at least the way I picture it.
Is there a script that comes to your mind when you say that though that you declined in the past, or a project that you declined in the past that you worked on or were thinking about working on but decided not to?
Yeah, there's been a couple. I'm not gonna like throw their names out there, but yeah, for sure.
Well, is it just in terms of a common thing, especially in indie filmmaking, is anticipating that they'll be able to accomplish more scale than what they thought, and so scale tends to be a bigger, um, uh, especially well when it comes to directors too. That I've noticed in the indie space is that not if they not only do they have a lack of understanding, is that if they have a lack of understanding in something, when they're talking to a DP, they also don't know how to talk to the DP in their own language in order to communicate the picture that's in their head,
Yeah,
and be able to work with that synergy that they're going to feed back to them. And so when, in terms of communication, when it comes to that, say you get stuck on a project, but the director's a nice guy, he's doing his best, the script is good, but he's not the best communicator. Um, when when do you feel like it might be appropriate to step in and sort of uh, be more assertive with the vision that's in your head when the director seems to be kind of lacking in terms of being able to communicate the picture, the vision of the picture that's in their head?
sure. I think it starts with trust. I think it's wise to, as a filmmaker, director, writer, somebody going to set out to make a project, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's wise to surround yourself with people you can trust and people you can count on when um, you do face those moments where, okay, maybe I'm not explaining this or getting my vision across the way that I picture it in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so maybe like lean into like those people that I just mentioned that you can count on, that you can trust on, to maybe experiment, give it a shot, and see if it works, see if it doesn't. I think also it's easier said than done, right?
Yeah,
Because if you're
obviously. Yeah.
on set and there's, I don't know, 15, 20 people standing around,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier said than done. But um, yeah, I think it's just, and I think to combat that, it's just building trust with the people you surround yourself on a project, but also spending time with them. Like, you know, maybe this isn't as much of a cliche as it used to be, but the whole fix it and post mindset, the whole we don't need pre-production mindset, I think that's very bad. I think, in my opinion, pre-production is the most important aspect of going to set out and make a movie. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also one of the processes that I actually enjoy the most, um, because you're visually crafting the story. You're visually piecing together how you want it to look like. It doesn't mean like, okay,
Right.
this look that we made is going to turn out exactly like how it did, but the thought that this is what we want to use as a reference, I just think is awesome. And having those kind of discussions with directors and just kind of narrowing down our like lens choices, our camera choices, and stuff like that, I think is quite fascinating.
I think one of the things that happen in the indie world, which is not helpful is when uh, the interpersonal crew dynamics start to get political, and then alliances within the production start to form, and then that cohesion, that that coherence that ideally should happen, where everything is working together very synergistically, don't mesh well because one person is going too far. Like, to give a really um, bad but useful example is like when a PA suddenly wants to become one of the key crew and start going beyond just being a PA in that
Sure.
regard, and so they people going outside of their roles and then assuming more say than what they know that they should have, and I'm
Sure.
sure you've had those experiences on sets where the sound, actually no, the sound guy is normally the most chill person on set. It's normally the most
Most of
chill
the time,
person.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
um,
think I think I think I understand where you're getting at, and I think it's checking your ego at the door, right? You know,
mhm.
you're
Which is a big problem, I think, in the indie world,
yeah, for sure.
because it's
But
filled with a lot of people that think they're going to be the next big boy on the block with this next project that they're going to make, and suddenly, or you'll have a director that starts micromanaging the DP in the
mm,
little ways. And I think I've
sure.
actually mentioned this before to you in one of our previous conversations. Of so you can tell there's some directors that they wanted to be the DP, but they just couldn't, and so they end up micromanaging the DP, and like they almost kind of just want to like molest your camera while it's on
Yeah,
set, and just
work to
start touching
directors
everything. And
work to directors who do that. DPs do not like it. You might find one or two, but it's quite uncommon.
have you had those experiences personally?
Yeah, I have. It's yeah.
Well, rest in peace, man.
That's why I know it sucks.
Yeah. On-set dynamics are always interesting. You can almost tell what kind of set you're on from the first like 15 minutes, and then exactly how it's going to be outside of
Oh
something catastrophic happening that where people have to adjust on the fly.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so give me an example of where things, as a DP, things have gone wrong. Pre-production suddenly, for whatever reason, location didn't fall through. Um, it didn't. The plan isn't panning out, and so now you got to adjust on the fly. Um, Give me an example of where you, as a DP, have uh, made a suggestion that paid off in the final product, um, where you had to completely improvise. It's in one regard or another.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna have to think about it. Um,
I'll just put Jeopardy music over it.
um, so you're asking a situation where in pre-production you set out to do something, but during production it fell through for whatever reason, and you have to improvise.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, I can get very specific here.
Oh, go ahead.
We it's quite simple too. We forgot to pick up some type of equipment. We forgot to pick up a Dana Dolly
Okay.
uh, for a short film I was doing a few years
Explain what a
ago.
Dana Dolly is for the audience.
Yeah, so a Dana Dolly is just um, you have two like they're called low boy stands.
Uh-huh.
They're probably 3 feet tall, like, and then they extend up to risers, um, and then on each side there's connections between the low boy stands and the speed rail, and then
Mm-hmm.
on top of the speed rail is like a sled, and you put the camera on the sled, and basically it's like instead of having a huge dolly, dolly track, like if you want to do like a simple like dolly, or that's not a dolly, a simple truck move or a dolly move,
On
but
like
you
some
don't have
rails or
like the
something like
crew or
that.
the resources or anything like that, you would want to use a Dana dolly. Um,
Is that
but
the one you sit on, or is that the one you sit on?
no, you don't sit on it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's also like another plus, depending on how you look at it. You're taking up less space.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we didn't forget the Dana dolly. We forgot we had the wrong tie down on our tripod head. Um,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't work on the Dana dolly. So and I have to shout out our camera assistant on this, but we experimented for a little bit, and you know, it wasn't perfect, but we had a pillow underneath the camera body itself. We kind of made like a makeshift cine saddle, which, if people don't know what a cine saddle is, it's like a imagine you have like a handbag or something,
Okay.
but obviously it's not a handbag, but it's um, what's the best way to explain it? It's like in a handbag form factor, but there's things in the handbag, but there isn't an opening because it's not a handbag. It's just like this kind of saddle that the camera sits
Hmm.
on top of. So we had that kind of setup going, but on top of the sled, and it actually turned out pretty well. There's the name of the movie is Man Obsessed, and I think in the scene where he's in like his room and he's getting ready to play guitar,
Hmm.
that's where we had that issue. So if
Okay.
you guys want to look it up and see it, and if it looks weird, let me know. But I feel
Or
like it turned
if
out.
it doesn't look like something was wrong, then it worked out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's something else I appreciate about what I do and what we all do as filmmakers is the dedication that it takes to um, like put the time and the effort into shots, into scenes. Um, but when it gets pieced together and the final product is out there for everybody to see it, it's like um, almost in like a weird, like mysterious, beautiful way. Like people don't really. It's not that they don't care, but they don't really understand like what it takes to do all that stuff. And I think the people that um, can actually like put all that time and dedication and effort into something where
Hmm.
people might not appreciate, I think is really special.
They don't understand like all of the micro steps that go in to just even something simple like setting up the camera,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah,
uh, to getting everything organized on set, just so that you're able to shoot a couple shots and then suddenly make a
right,
company move to another location. You're
right.
like, what? You only that took a whole day to film? Well, it took like, well, one, we had a half day of setup, and then one guy showed up late, and then we were missing as another piece of equipment, and then we have all of these other things that we have to implement in order to get these shots going right, and then maybe the director's going nuts and not
Yeah.
minding the schedule that we're on, which
Hey,
is
DPs
probably
are guilty of it too.
that's that's true. Anyone that's in a key position, a key creative position,
Yeah,
has at some point or another been guilty of consuming too much time on something specific.
yeah,
Because we're guilty of perfectionism more often than we like to admit.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's a blessing and a curse to have that in this industry for sure.
Hmm. What type of movie or type of story that ideally you would like to be able to tell?
Mhm.
That what motifs and patterns within that story do you find that you gravitate toward, to
Mhm.
either view or create, which produces that emotional high that you get when you watch and create something?
Yeah, such a good question. I really appreciate character driven stories, grounded and, based on, coming of age, acceptance, uh, maybe grief, sorrow, just the human emotions. And it doesn't have to be this like grandiose, like Marvel movie.
Right.
Like I actually not I don't think I would want to shoot something like that. But really just those grounded, like intimate human centric stories,
Really.
yeah, are what I'm really interested in.
Hmm.
Honestly, too, like maybe I look back, maybe we look back on this podcast and I'm doing it, but I really want to get into documentary filmmaking too.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I'm not saying like, oh, I'm gonna shift and like do that full time, but I think it would be really eye opening and interesting to give that a shot and hop on a couple of those type of projects, because for everything I just mentioned, I think it's there in documentary filmmaking.
Hmm. I know a guy um, who actually once upon a time ago helped out on the feature that still isn't freaking done. Um, he, I think last year, released, either released or shot. I had to go back and check a documentary that he went to Ukraine for.
Wow.
Yeah, he went to Ukraine. I'm gonna see if I can't get him on the podcast.
Yeah.
Um, he's one of those guys that it's just impossible to get a hold of. Not that he's
Sure.
not showing interest. It's just like it's you have to basically send up smoke signals in order to
Yeah.
get within his vicinity of vision.
Yeah.
Um,
He's not. Is he's? I assume he's not in Ukraine anymore. He just went to do
no, I
that for.
met him. I met him the other day by just sheer coincidence at a 21 Pilots concert.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's always funny when you run into somebody that you know in the most random way possible.
Right. That happened to me a couple weeks ago, actually.
It's like it's his own version of deja vu. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I was going out and I ran into a director that I've worked with in the past, and he's in LA right now too, and he's from here, but I get this was around Thanksgiving, so obviously he was back in town visiting family. But
That makes sense.
yeah, it was quite serendipitous for sure.
Tell me what's going on with the feature that you might maybe are kind of signed on to be. Like, where are you at with that? Because my understanding, if I recall correctly, that this would be your first feature that you would. Would this be your first feature? Second.
Yeah.
This is your second. Tell me where you're at with that and what's going on with there.
Yeah. Truthfully, I'm kind of taking a hiatus from it until we get a little bit more secured with it.
Hmm.
Take that as you will. But
Okay.
uh, no, I mean, most of the pre-production's done. Me and the director are are synergized in terms of
That's
what we want
important.
the movie to look like, which is good. Again, I feel like a lot of the work is already done. It's just going out and executing it at this point.
Right.
There's a couple locations we still need to scout, but we have shot by shot the whole movie.
Oh,
We have
you got that whole everything broke down in that regard then.
Yeah, except the two locations we haven't looked at yet.
Right.
And then we have a lookbook for just about every scene. Like the scenes that we don't have a lookbook for are like common scenes within like the scenes that we already made a lookbook for.
Do you like it when it's that meticulous and there's a game plan for absolutely everything?
Yeah, I love it. Like I said, pre-production's my favorite. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't gone as far as made lighting diagrams yet, but I imagine I would probably for a few scenes. I used to actually, in the short film world, I actually used to make diagrams for the whole thing. But I found if you only make a few and maybe not even any, and you're like really tight with your gaffer and like your
Hmm.
team, your key grip, you they'll start to notice like some of the common things you like to do. Oh wow, I'm just looking at myself right now. That's a little bit.
The lighting is bothering the DP.
There we go. Where was I going? Yeah. So you eventually get in synergy with your other crew,
Hmm.
your other fellow colleagues when you're on set over time, and it's this one big beautiful thing where everybody knows what everybody wants from each other, what they want to achieve, what they set out to achieve. I think it's great.
I think one of the most important relationships that goes not necessarily unnoticed, but a lot of people, especially just people that aren't in filmmaking, don't understand is that everyone knows about the director DP relationship, but the next relationship to that is between the DP and the key gaffer.
Mm-hmm.
So for educate the audience a little bit on what a good relationship looks like between those two people, and what the role of the gaffer ideally ought to be.
Yeah, such a great question, and I'm very blessed and fortunate to have a fantastic gaffer that I've worked with just about on all the projects that I've worked on. Not all of them, but maybe like 50, 60%. Um, but yeah, no, to answer that question, it's, I think you can tell, and I kind of said this a little bit earlier, you can kind of tell if you have that good relationship with somebody
Mm-hmm.
when they're already doing something a certain way and you don't even have to explain it. Like
That unspoken
they're already
relationship,
doing
yeah.
it ahead of time. So that's kind of how that's what I've been fortunate enough to have experience with this person. But yeah, and then for, I don't know if you asked this or not, but those of you guys listening that don't know, the gaffer is in charge of, the way the way the movie looks from a lighting perspective.
Hmm.
Not maybe not that far. Obviously the DP too, but it's actually going out and executing it from a technical standpoint.
Like where we're going to get power from, how are we going to route the cords to around the scene so that they're hidden if they have to be in the on set and they can't go around
Yeah,
everything. And so
yeah. What
it's a
kind of
lot of.
fixtures are we using? Why are we using those fixtures? Are we using color? Are we using hard light? Are we using soft light? You know, what kind of tools are we using to paint?
Do you find
You know,
that at least with the gaffer that you've worked with the most, um, when do you find that you find yourself learning things from a cinematographer's perspective in terms of how light works and it interacts with one another that you didn't know beforehand?
oh, all the time. Yeah, absolutely. I think at least for me, um, I like to surround myself with people who know more about stuff than I do, um, because I think you never stop learning in this industry, and if you do, then
That's the
if you
fun
do,
part.
yeah, if you do stop learning, then something's wrong. Um, so yeah, I mean, quite simply to answer that question, it's yeah, all the time.
Nice. I mean, if you feel if anyone in the anyone that is an artist feels like they've learned everything there is to learn, that means ego has taken over at a certain point because
Mhm.
of which isn't always. I find sometimes ego isn't always necessarily a moral problem within the person, but it's sort of the becoming jaded to new experiences because you've done something so long.
Right.
Um,
I
and
think I think a lot of it stems in fear too.
mm,
Surprisingly, I don't know if you can kind of get that out of it, but yeah, I think we're delicate creatures as human beings, and I think there's a lot. I like how I just cut in and I forgot what I was going to say, but um, yeah. Anyway,
with the lighting though, there's so many different ways to look at it. You have the intensity of it. You have how far away the fixture is, um, and there's so many variables because it's not just the light, but it's also the the color it's giving off of, how dense the air is that it's passing through. And, lighting is really, it's a field of physics.
Mhm.
Um,
What kind of texture is the beam of light hitting also?
or it's shining through. Sometimes you'll have
Yeah,
those vents and
they're
grates that you'll
reflecting
put.
too.
What's the hardest thing about lighting that you have encountered that you think a lot of people just don't know about?
Sorry, say that again.
What's the um, hardest thing about lighting in terms of its execution and the variables that it presents when it comes to getting an image the way you want it to be, that um, you think a lot of people just don't know about?
Mhm. Yeah. To get a little bit philosophical, life imitates art, art imitates life. You know, I think you just need to go out and experience the world and see how in the natural world how light affects things. I mean, right now, look at this
Yeah,
on my head.
the color values of your hair are changing a little bit. So it's
Mhm.
dark and brown, borderline, black that's showing up on the screen. But when the light hits it, now it's revealing the auburn and
Yeah,
light brown and blonde areas that it's hitting. And so
yeah,
lighting
yeah, and
changes the philosophy of the image on a subconscious level.
I think also too, um, people forget this a lot. Um, you know, um, there's there's a more scientific way to say what I'm about to say, but there's a color of a specific object, and then there's the color of the light itself, the color temperature of the
Yeah.
light itself. Um, it doesn't always mean that the color of the object is that specific color
Hmm.
due to it being the object. Sometimes it's because of the light and vice versa, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. I know what you're talking about. There's our eyes. Uh, I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to things about this. So like I do know some of the science behind it, and it's really, to me, it's just it's really really fascinating. So there's colors are just the results of the particular wavelength of light hitting an object. So what we see is actually what our brains are able to summarize of the the color of an object is what is the wavelength of light that it's reflecting. All of the
Mhm.
light is hitting that object,
Right.
and based on the density of the molecules and what the material is made up out of, it will reflect a particular color.
Right.
But there's some colors actually that um, are we aren't actually innately um, in nature that often, but we see that color because our brains are able to do this math equation to subtract one wavelength of light that it can't really understand,
Mhm.
and then it adds another. It finds the average of what we're able to perceive, assuming you're not colorblind and you have all three cones in your eye. So
Mhm.
there's an actual color spectrum of what it works on, and then there's the ones, and then there's the color spectrum that our eyes are actually able to detect. I
Right.
think one of the examples of this, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's actually green, or not green. It's it's violet and
Mm.
purple, because on one hand, the short wavelength. I really hope I remember this correctly. Otherwise, I'm going to butcher it. The longest wavelength of light is ultraviolet,
Mm.
um, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I think it's it's not red. Is it red?
Yeah, it might be infrared. I actually, I've read this before, but I forgot it. But no, totally. It might be infrared. I don't know. I can't.
Infrared. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. I think it might be. I think, yeah, infrared is such a fast short wavelength that our
Mm.
eyes only pick up a fraction of it, and so it registers as red. But those longer wavelengths of light, or maybe I could be completely getting this. You know what? All right, for the sake of the podcast, I gotta look this back up.
All right, so now you have
I
to edit
now I have
this.
no.
Screwed up now.
No, no, no. I gotta show my ego and everything. I gotta, I gotta. I'm gonna cut right to the part where I suddenly know everything. Um, longest. This this is definitely a prepared podcast. Longest wavelength of light, because it's just bothering me because I literally read this the other day and I don't even remember it. Uh, yeah, longest visual wavelength, the radio wave.
I'm looking
Oh,
at the
okay.
I'm looking at the visible light spectrum right now, and it definitely looks like red has takes up the
Okay.
most amount of wavelengths on the scale.
Red is the longest wavelength, and then the shortest wavelength is violet and ultraviolet light.
Hmm.
And so, you go up from violet, it's blue, and then green, yellow, orange, and then you slowly get to red, which is the longer wavelength. Because I knew
Yeah.
that, because I also, like I said, I dabble a little bit in just, astrophysics. And so, James Webb Space Telescope, right. This is a different podcast at this point because now we're getting all nerdy. The reason it's able to, I remember that red was the longest because the galaxies furthest away that we can't see with the naked eye without the James Webb Space Telescope is they're called redshifted, where the wave
Hmm.
of light that's hitting Earth that we're able to see has been traveling for so long that
Right.
now that wavelength is stretched out and it can't be picked up
Right.
that way. And so, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes
Hmm.
sense, man. That stuff's all quite fascinating to me. I just haven't dug into that world too much yet, but
Hmm.
it's really interesting how physics and filmmaking and cinematography are related.
If you look at actually a lot of um, scientists of the beginning of modern science, like say Newtonian physics, and I'm thinking, okay, Roger Bacon, not Roger Deacon. Roger Deacon is very much alive at the moment, as far as I know. But
Yep.
characters and figures like um,
I got to meet
Gal.
him fortunately.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I
Oh,
met him at
nice.
a Cinegear this year.
That's awesome. How much time did you get with him?
Oh no, it was a huge line of people. I was only really just able to say my thanks and basically
Hmm.
just tell him like you're kind of the reason why I got into this.
That's
He was
awesome.
one of the reasons, and yeah, it was a really awesome moment for sure.
That's memorable.
Yeah.
Um, but with Isaac Newton, Galileo, Roger Bacon, they weren't just scientists of their day, they were also artists. And so
Hmm.
I think a lot of what's missing from the world of art is that scientific bent where you get super nerdy on it because once you understand how something fundamentally works, then you know
Right.
how to address the problem in a manner um,
Mm.
in a manner that's much more coherent and ideally quicker.
Mm.
And I really wish
There's nothing wrong with being logical about things.
no, you just can't get you just got to be able to balance those two forces and not get lost in the weeds and
Hmm.
then eat up production time because you're getting really nerdy about something.
Uh, yeah, we're sitting here over here talking about the visible light spectrum, while everybody else is just like, all right, well, what's the next shot?
um, well, because like a lot of artists, especially filmmakers, they go after their art because um, they want to partake in the production of art because they experience something generally moving, meaningful, or emotional, or a combination thereof, with an art that they received, and then they want to go out and create something and replicate that feeling, and then give that back to someone else. So it's a very symbiotic and fundamentally empathetic relationship that artists have with art. But I think you'd be able to accomplish art a lot better if you had this. If artists would be able to accomplish what they're looking for and have more meaning in their art if they had a scientific bent to it,
Mm.
just
Yeah,
like the people of
I
old.
agree. Just like what? Sorry.
just like the people of old, you know, Isaac Newton,
Yeah, yeah,
Galileo.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Um, you know, this could turn into a whole nother debate for another day, but yeah, I think there are a lot of things missing in modern day that you know, we could really benefit from. So that's just me, though.
Give an example.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think that example you just mentioned, you know, having a scientific base on your artistic decisions. You know, we just talked about it. You know, it's instrumental,
Mm-hmm.
important to have. But I think another example is, you know, maybe this is the old man in me, but you know, I appreciate a good book.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't think
I read too.
a lot of people read anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a cinematographer saying this. Somebody who is naturally a visual
Mm-hmm.
minded person. So
Ironically,
um,
though, when you read, you engage that part of the brain that
that's
creates
true.
the image. So you're
Yeah,
actually
that's very true.
throwing that system, that visual system in your head into overdrive because there is no visual medium
Right.
that's being
That's
communicated. So
true.
when you're reading, you get a completely different high when it comes to that input that's going into your brain.
Yeah. I also think too, um, kind of the decline of the book is also a reflection on the implementation of the web, um,
Facts.
and the decline of physical media. You know, because I think having a physical book means something too. Like it's another element of that experience you just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't get the same. I mean, I like audiobooks just because they're convenient. It's the same thing like at the podcast. Like, probably most people aren't going to sit down and watch this. They'll watch a part of it, but then they'll shove it in their pocket and they'll listen to the rest because, you know, they're going about their day doing their thing.
Yeah.
Um, which is a great tool format. You know, you get to serve both worlds at the same time.
Hmm.
But when it comes to like listening to audiobooks, uh, because it's a little bit less of a high, just in my personal opinion, when you get to handling a physical book because you're having someone else's voice create the picture in your head.
Hmm.
Granted, you are creating the picture in your head because you can't see it, but there's a personal touch that your brain does, I think,
Hmm.
um, when it's your voice in your head that's reading it and creating the image. It adds a little bit more, no pun intended, color to the image.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you for sure. Yeah, I never really got into audiobooks. I did, you know, like to your point, you know, if I'm on a commute going somewhere or on the go, like it, sure, put it
Mm-hmm.
in. But yeah, not so much anymore. I listen to a lot of podcasts though, for sure. Um, you know, so that's, I guess maybe that's why I'm on here. I don't know. No, I actually enjoy you, Anthony.
I really want to listen. You're like, I really want to have a podcast where I can listen to myself talk.
um, yeah,
I sure as heck don't. Um,
yeah.
but I'm gonna rewatch, you know, parts of this because I'm gonna be the one editing it and, you know, making sure and
Yeah.
all that. Um, so
So it is edited.
I'm tweaking it. I'm not
Secret is
changing
out there.
it. I mean, an edit's really obvious. An edit is pretty obvious on a nonstop video. So
Right.
if I do tweak something, it'll be pretty noticeable. I won't get away with it.
Just cut to some B-roll, man.
Yeah, just cut to B-roll. I'll just play clips from your short films and then make it really make it really
Yeah,
aesthetic.
you're gonna like download them from YouTube, and they're like all super compressed.
They're all super compressed.
Yeah, that's
um,
funny.
technically, what is something that you would like to know more about in your field that you think would add the most amount of value immediately to your craft?
Oh man, another great question. Um, well, I can give you a snotty answer. I don't know because I haven't discovered it yet. But no, I think I think learning a little bit more about camera moves, shot selection, where to put the camera and why. That I think that's more so something the director worries about, but having that knowledge and that background, I think could be very beneficial, just from that standpoint of what you were mentioning earlier, when a director doesn't know the lingo to talk to other crew members. If you can implement losing my train of thought, if you can grab a little bit of that knowledge and use it to your benefit to help improve communication with your director, or honestly whoever, I think could go really far. I think also too, to me, it could be beneficial for directors to act, or at least try acting, and to that vein, and just see like what it's like on the other side.
Facts. So, I've thought about doing a little bit of acting, and I've poked my head around here and there a little bit. But in terms of communication, if I know what it's like to be in that headspace of being able to give a performance, particularly an emotional performance, then I'll have a better repertoire of language to be able to communicate with the actor. Especially, I think a lot of directors are also, at least that I've personally met, they, not that they don't know the lingo of how to communicate, because obviously directors in general know how to communicate their vision, but they don't know how necessarily to break it down from the other person's perspective, and using this ironically inverse language to communicate their vision in a way that they're not relating to.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand too with a director of photography explaining something to the gaffer, the key rip, whoever, camera assistant. If you've worked in those positions in the past, then you have an understanding from the other side, the other perspective of the question that the director of photography is asking you. Yeah, I think it's very important in this industry to have multiple perspectives and, multiple experiences, and having the ability to having the ability to
show me through the camera what you're thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, man.
Is there another position that you think if you learned more about, it would make you a better DP?
Well, yeah, I kind of back to what I mentioned earlier, like learning more about camera operating, trying that a little bit more, camera movement, camera positioning. I think, and this is just a reflection on myself where I think I can improve. So if I can master that stuff a little bit more, I think that'll greatly
Do you think
improve.
maybe if you, I was referring more specifically, if you weren't a DP and you took up another position on set, good Lord, don't interrupt me while I'm talking phone. I get these scammer calls all day long, and it's awful. I would honestly like to pay I'm at the point where I might pay a robo-blogger. Like I might. Yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous.
It's really bad. And I even tried, which I knew this wouldn't work, but I thought I'd just have fun with it. I would just start being mean to them, on the other end of the phone. I'd turn into like an impromptu therapist. Like, so what led you to this job? Are you happy? Are you happy with this job? No.
I hate to admit, because I was in a certain headspace at the time, I was pretty mean to one of them. So, yeah, no, you get to a point where I don't put this in, but
okay, and then now for the audience, describe the relationship between the camera operator and the DP.
Yeah. sometimes the director of photography is the camera operator.
Hmm.
And I guess I'm talking specifically in that instance where I would also be the camera operator. I have a couple of projects, in fact, many projects where I am the camera operator and the DP.
Hmm.
It's not my go-to choice, but sometimes that's just how things are. So if I can get some more reps just as a camera operator, not having to worry about
Right.
the lighting, the shot selection with the director, the collaboration with the director, and just worry about executing my shot, my camera movement, I think that would make me a better DP.
Yeah.
That
Camera.
specific scenario where I would be the
Did you run
director of
into any
photography.
frustrations where you weren't the camera operator and they weren't like doing necessarily exactly like what you were instructing them to do in that regard? Or because I would think like if I was DP and I normally handle the camera, but in this particular instance I'm not, I would be basically telling someone how to move my hand, how to move my hands, and so like what kind of what
Yes,
like how do
I
you like
think
direct somebody who's becoming your hands in that instance?
I think yes and no, because the conversation I had with you earlier with the relationship between the DP and the gaffer,
Hmm.
where it gets to a point where they can anticipate like what you want, and to also give that person trust to try something, I think means a lot to that person. So obviously it takes a lot of trust, it takes a lot of relationship building,
Yeah.
but um, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it works all the time. So when it doesn't work, it's to me at least, it's as simple as, okay, I didn't want you to do this, can you do this instead?
Hmm.
And I think that's the beauty of narrative, like I think that's the beauty of scripted filmmaking, is that you get multiple chances, you get
Right.
multiple takes
It's
to
not
where you
like
can't.
theater where you have to
I wouldn't,
rehearse over and over
yeah,
and over again.
I wouldn't be wanting a camera operator if it was like a one, or like a well, not a, like if it was something where you only had one chance to do it,
Right.
I would probably camera operate it.
Hmm.
Like a stunt is happening or something like that. Um,
Where there's a lot of variables at play that like you're not going to be able to replicate again. If you got, say I've never had experience with this, but like I know of stories, obviously. Pyrotechnics, explosive bullets, fake bullets, obviously in that regard. Things where the most amount of value money is being spent on a particular shot, and so it requires, you just as the DP, you need to make sure that there aren't any mess ups, not to rag on the other guy, but it's more just being taking a hold because it's your responsibility to make sure that it's actually executed in that regard, and so you have to take a hold and bear that responsibility to
yeah,
ensure that everything goes smoothly.
there's a lot to be said about that too, for sure. I think also too, from a creative standpoint, being the DP and the camera operator at the same time also allows you to be a little bit more. I'm sure camera operators get this too, but as a director of photography who is overseeing the look of the project, if you're also the camera operator, you can instinctively influence that look from a camera movement perspective, whatever. Um, there's like there's one step that gets taken away when you are the director of photography and the camera operator.
Hmm.
There's a step that gets in the way sometimes when you have a camera operator, but you're the director of photography. So I think it's a case by case basis for sure. But if you have that relationship with
Hmm.
somebody,
Shout out to all the focus pullers too that don't get any recognition.
we haven't barely talked about those guys.
Those guys are worth their weight in gold, especially if you have like an action film. Good
Yeah,
God. Yeah,
Yeah.
those guys earn every bit of their money.
Yeah, I think the best focus pullers, first assistant cameras also allow you to not once think about the camera uh, from the
Mhm.
perspective of, okay, well, how much ND do I have in here? How much,
Mhm.
uh, like, why is this right here? It's getting in the way. Like, if they know
Mhm.
that you
When your hands are offloaded to the roles and jobs of other people, like camera operator, focus puller, gaffer, let's say you got the holy trinity of those guys.
Mhm.
Where is your attention going as the DP, knowing, assuming that those guys are going to handle it in the perfect, most perfect way possible? Where is your attention going when the shot is about to happen, um, for checking and making sure that everything's okay? Like, what are you looking for that could go wrong and that you might have to address?
Yeah, I think it instantly becomes more focused on the story and more focused on the director's vision, and uh, also focus on set design and set dressing, not from a perspective, oh, like I'm going to take over and do this, but uh, okay, now it opens up the door to more conversations with other key departments, I think,
Hmm.
uh, which in turn will make the final
You're
product a
saying
little bit.
you have a little bit more time to get more specific with the shot, and communicating with the other departments to just add that extra little bit of value where you might not have noticed necessarily beforehand, because you have been worried about setting up and being able to accomplish those other tasks, that your hands are now
Yeah.
free to go and explore and try new other variables that you wouldn't have been able to have the time to actually see.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's so much more. Like there's so many things that can be dissected from a shot, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
picture is worth 1,000 words. So obviously having as many perspectives as you can is good. I think when you have such a solid crew around you, it's easier to have those multiple perspectives on an image. So,
Mm-hmm. Is that where you
and
feel most comfortable, is when you're able to delegate as much as possible?
I think so. Uh, yeah, yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Other than, because
I used to
obviously
not
there's.
be, sorry to cut you off. I used to not be that way because I, and I think everybody deals with this. Sometimes you just don't know what you want, and that takes time to build that. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking for me, at least years. So now I feel like, and even if it's not the right decision in the moment, I feel confident to be able to make those decisions quickly because I know it's like, oh, it's not going to be like it's not going to shut the whole production down if I like delegate something. So, um, being able to build that confidence within yourself over time
Mm-hmm.
and being able to delegate, like when you have that ability, to me, it makes your job a lot easier
Mm-hmm.
as a director of photography.
That's true. Yeah, when, like, the instances that I've had to communicate with the DP, um, going back to being able to have that vocabulary of language uh, to have it as a resource to be able to communicate. It's sometimes like, I personally would struggle picking, if I'm not sure which word might be technically correct to communicate. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I get a little bit. It looks like I don't know what I'm about to say, but really I'm choosing between like three or four different phrases or words to be able to
Yeah,
actually pick out which is the
yeah,
best one. And
yeah.
I found, I I basically, and it's particularly embarrassing when the thing is very simple and you're trying to describe it, but it's simple in your head, but it actually has a technical process behind it.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like, the dichotomy that you get between just adjusting the ISO and then adjusting the aperture, or your
Mm-hmm.
stop. There's
Yeah,
a balancing act right there, and maybe you have a particular version that requires um, a specific balance, but you're not sure which one to ask more of or which one to ask less of in order to accomplish that look that you have of the picture in your
Right.
head. And, just to the other directors, like, just freaking ask. Just
Yeah.
freaking ask.
Just ask and know that the worst thing that's going to come out of that is, hey, there
Hmm.
is a better way to do this, and I'm going to show you, or I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you. You know,
Life is way more fun when you are the learner.
yeah, absolutely,
It's way more fun.
absolutely. Again, going back to it, I think that's one of the special and unique things about this industry is you never stop learning.
Hmm. And in terms of personalities, what I have found is that there's very little um, middle ground when it comes to an artist. They're either very, very controlling, or sometimes they need to be more controlling than what they actually are because they don't want to step on other people's toes. They're either very disagreeable or they're very agreeable, and there's not a lot of people that know how to walk that rope that splits between those two categories.
Yeah, yeah, I will agree with you, but at the same time, I'm fortunate. I have, in my experience, met people like that where they are they can balance it.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying, to your point, I'm not saying everybody's like that,
Right.
but I have been a little bit fortunate to surround myself with people like that and work with people like that in the past.
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I have still worked with
You've had a
people.
few horror stories of your own.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
um, yeah, but then again, horror stories make good stories to tell to the crew that aren't horror stories.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
obviously, like, this podcast is gonna be public, but like if this was a closed conversation, like, we'd be naming names, we'd be talking about, there, that happens behind the scenes, obviously, and so that's why it's important. Obviously, you got to be a really humble person when it comes to the approach of your craft, but with humility, people also need to learn how to uh, know that there is a very large array of assertiveness that can come with a large amount of humility.
Hmm.
And that just takes time and experience to get into when it comes to interacting with people. And people, even if you're not like, even if you're a director who's very intuitive, or you're an actor that can smell a lie from a mile away because you know how to read people even better than the director can, um, most of the time people are actually able to read you right off the bat,
Sure.
and they will smell shit as soon as it walks in the door.
Yeah.
It's very it's not always the most obvious thing, but it will rear its ugly head more sooner than you think when it pops up.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's why first impressions mean everything.
They do, yeah.
Yeah. That's yeah, man. My first impression of you was like, oh yeah, this guy he's a psychotic killer. No,
I have gotten that before though, because like I have, as someone like I don't tend to like I don't tend to I'm not focused on first. People whose predisposition is to be the first one to read people in the room come off like the psycho.
sure.
Yeah, they come off like the psycho, and then sometimes that actually lends itself to the being assertive in a really ironic way, because now if you're a really intuitive person, you're the first one to get the data. You're the first one to get the skinny on what's actually going behind the scenes
Yeah.
of someone's brain.
Yeah.
Now, that can also lead to a particular level of arrogance, which some directors and creators will fall into because they think they know everything, and because they are intuitive. But that's another area of like that psychotic element coming into play when it comes to reading people and thinking that you know what's actually going on. But you also have to have the humility to know that you could very well be wrong completely. Maybe this other person is just having a bad day or an off day, or you met somebody on their first impression on their off day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
Yeah.
a creatives are so weird. They're contradictions. They're quirky. They're nerdy. Uh, but then again, I think that comes from just the personality itself of being a creative. is that you intake a lot of data and then you try to remanufacture and reverse engineer all of that so you can create something else. And
Mhm.
so that sense of identity is also fluctuating because of your identity is externalized from the input that you're getting from
Right.
not just other people, but also the things that are contributing to your particular craft, whether it be writing, directing, or cinematography and all that regard.
Hmm.
So
Oh
why
yeah.
it's the wild, wild west when it comes to art.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You can say that again for sure. So
Um,
what?
any,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah. What other questions do you have that you didn't get to yet?
Um, I think I got to most of everything. What are your final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience?
Yeah. Uh, I kind of want to go back to a point that I didn't quite flesh out, and it was when we were talking about light. So just go out and get new experiences. Go out and just, not to sound cheesy, but go out and see the world and interact with people and
Mm-hmm.
get off your phones. To get
Read
very
a
specific.
book. Read a book. Get off.
Yeah,
Get off of doom scrolling. The amount of
go
doom
out and talk
scrolling
to
that
people.
happens.
Yeah, go out and see the world. Go out and talk to people. Go out and see what light looks like in the other part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I
Because there's different air densities in other parts of the world and at different elevations, which contribute to light factors. So another nerdy tidbit for
Yeah,
other stuff.
yeah, yeah, and then also if you're in the southern hemisphere, you the angle of the sun in the sky is much different than it is in the northern
I
hemisphere.
forgot about that.
Yeah,
I forgot
yeah,
about that.
the Earth is not flat, Anthony.
What? Don't tell me that. No, no. NASA's obviously lying to us. What are you talking about? It's all CG stage.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, man. I mean, that's pretty much all I have. I think also if you're somebody who is not into filmmaking but is interested in filmmaking, um, just reach out to somebody in the industry here. I think we are all very friendly and approachable people.
mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a bad apple in
Exceptions.
every group, but yeah, just reach out to somebody, and I'm sure they'll be happy to guide you and you know
Mm-hmm.
give you any advice that you may have. I think if you have some sort of gravitational pull towards this, you should give it a shot. You might like it, you might hate it, but you know,
Facts.
those of us that are here and are sticking around, we obviously like it. I think this is one of the easier industries to get out of if you're not enjoying it.
Right.
So, yeah, that's about all I got.
You won't know unless you try, and then it's better to know and have failed than to not have done anything at all.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, yeah, man,
That's a
this is a good one. I stumbled a little bit in the beginning, but I'm
you're
sure
good.
you have 30 minutes to work with.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be able to come on and talk. So
Yeah,
I
man.
think that's a good note to end off on. Some little bit of philosophy, a little bit of physics, a little bit of people reading.
We actually talked about film too within all of that.
I
So,
know, I know. Funny how that happens on a podcast with film. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Jack. Take it easy.
yeah. See you, Anthony. Be
See
in
ya.
touch.